Okay, so now we've got something that's actually going to be able to like chase us around. So what we want to do, that wasn't working. Hold on. Okay, that is working. Is we want to set it up so that when these guys actually, if they do reach us, then they can take like an amount of health away from the character. Okay, so we need to give our character a health, and that needs to be displayed on the heads-up display. So what we're going to do first of all to do that is go to our first-person character. Okay, so we double-click in. Down the left-hand side again, remember where we had our variable for the score. We need to create a new variable for the amount of health. So click plus variable and name it health. Okay, and then go up here to change the variable type. So obviously remember Boolean isn't what we want. That's like yes or no. Unless you wanted it to be like either dead or alive, which you could do, I suppose. We don't want integer either because that's whole numbers. The amount of health is going to be calculated by percentage. All right, so for that we need to do a float. Okay. Once you've done that, just push compile because that's the only way you can access the default value, which is 0.0 by default. Now, obviously, if we had it at 0 by default, then the character would be dead on as soon as it started. So you want to make sure you change the health to 100. So essentially, that's going to be 100%. Okay. Unless for some reason your game starts where the character has, I don't know, like 50% health or something because you wanted that to be an element of the game. I don't know, but that's up to you. But I'm going to start mine at 100% and make sure I've compiled it. So we've created our variable. That's all we need to do here in the character because, again, we're creating it in the character because the character is always going to remain persistent, whereas the enemies won't be because they're getting killed off. Okay, so it's always going to be stored there in the character. Let's close that down. And first of all, we will go to the enemy type 2. Obviously, the type 1, that is stationary, they're not going to be able to take any health away from us. So we need to do it in type 2. And what we need to do is a similar thing to what we've got here where if we hit it, it gets destroyed and it gives us a score, but just slightly different. So what we want to do is select the box, so that's the collision box, remember? And we want to add an event which is going to be, we'll try this one first, hopefully this should work. So add a component begin overlap. Okay, so when the enemy starts to begin to overlap, collide with the character. So that means we need to cast to the character. So cast to first person character. And then object this time, just put that on other actor, okay? Because we want it to restrict it to only being able to be affected by the character. Otherwise, it could overlap with like a building and it will take health off you. So make sure that's connected there. So it's cast first person. Then what it's going to do is it's going to set the health. Okay, so there we've got our health variable that we just set up. So remember last time we did set and we did plus. This time what we want to do is from health, type in the float and float minus float. Okay. And then from here, actually not from there. From here we want get health. Okay, so it's going to be taking away a certain amount from the current amount of health. Okay, and then just here you can type in how much of a percentage you want it to take away each time you get hit. So let's say it's like 10. That's going to be 10%, or at least it should be. So compile that. Got an error here again. I always forget to do that. I'll link that back to there. And then you'll get a tick. Okay. What you then want to do is just make sure after set you want it to destroy itself. So destroy actor, okay, self, so that when it does hit you, it destroys itself rather than just continuously taking 10% constantly. Okay, so we'll do that and it'll destroy itself. Right, so if we just play, just to check that's working, it should bump into us and then disappear. Yeah, okay, that's doing that, that's fine. What you might want to do is you might want to add in the explosion again. So I'm going to do that because I like the explosion. So I'm going to, let's just do the same thing. So from here, spawn emitter at location, choose the explosion. The location is get world location, just the same as what we did before, and a reference for the box. I'll just drag it in. Okay, and then destroy it. Let's just make sure that works. So it should hit us and explode. Yeah, there we go. So we get hit and there's an explosion to show that we've been hit, basically. Cool. So it's all working and it is actually taking away 10% of the health each time. But again, we've got no indicator on the screen to show what's actually happening. So what we need to do is go over to the game widget that we created before. Okay, if you remember, this is where we set up the where the points go. Now we need to add to this for a health bar. Okay, so it's going to do this slightly differently because we want text and the bar to be aligned perfectly next to each other. So if you type in horizontal box, drag one of those in. Where do we want our health? I'll try it at the top for now. Get rid of that search, and then we want in there we want text. So you'll notice that it snaps into the horizontal box, and that wants to just say health. And we want a progress bar, which is going to be the health bar. And if you drop it in, it snaps next to it, and you'll see that by default it's tiny. Obviously we want it to fill the whole space. So what we want to do, if I can remember, it's up here. Oh yeah, I see it. So fill. So if it's normally it's on auto, if you click fill, it fills the whole space. Okay. So over on the left-hand side over here, if you want to resize it, click the horizontal box. We can just move it, and because it's in this box, we can move the box and it moves the whole thing. Okay. It's got our house somewhere up there. That'll do. And what I also want is for the color to change because it's grey and it's not changing. That's probably because, yeah, so by default the percentage is going to be at 0. So if you want to visually see what that's doing, if I scroll that, you can see the progress bar is filling and depleting. So put that to 100, so you can actually see, well, actually 1, which I've just has reminded me I did something wrong. So when we look at you're using a float, it's actually between 0 and 1, not 0 and 100. So with that in mind, I'm going to need to make some adaptations. So leave that at 1, save it, close it down, go back to the enemy type, no, sorry, to the first person character where we created the health variable. Remember we set it to 100. It's not 100, it's going to be 1. Okay, that's my bad. And then in the enemy type 2, when we said how much health we want it to take away, we want it to be 0.1 rather than 10. Okay, come back to our widget again. Right, anyway, so you can change the color to what you want. I think green makes sense. That'll be fine. And obviously you can change the health text as well, but you can adapt that how you want. So if I save that and I play, obviously we're going to see the health on the screen, which is great, but it's still not going to be updating, which is fine. So remember before we had to bind the value here to the variable. The same applies in this instance. So select the progress bar. The percentage is what we need to bind. Don't make the mistake, which a lot of people do, is try and bind it to the fill color, because that's not the right one. It's the percentage that we're binding to. So select that and do create a binding. We're repeating the process we did before. So cast to the first person character, and then get player character. Remember this time it's the health, so get health, and link that up to the return value. Compile that, it should get a tick, and then when we play now, one of them gets to us, you see the health bar goes down in little sections. Okay. Obviously at the moment it will get to 0 and actually nothing will happen. So the next thing we're going to need to do is set up something that when it actually gets to 0, maybe it's like game over or something. Okay, but that should be set up and working. So for now, if we just do a quick recap, we went to first person character, added a new variable called health, made it a float and make it 1, not 100. Then we went to the enemy type and we selected the collision box. So when it begins overlap to the first person character, set the health to minus 0.1 of the current health amount. Then it spawns the emitter and destroys the actor. Okay, and then with the widget, we added in a horizontal box, added in a bit of text and a progress bar, and the percentage amount is a binding, go to the graph, to the health variable that is stored in the first person character. Okay, so just quickly make sure it's working again. There we go. Okay, so make sure you've got that health bar all set up. One thing before I quickly forget, click the horizontal box. We've got to set the anchors. I know it was positioned correctly, but remember if that was viewed on a different screen, then the position of that might go off center. So it's going to anchor it to the top, because it's basically at the top of the screen. Just make sure that's there. Yep, fine. Okay,